Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, the place for internet technology professionals whose work-life balance plan has imploded. We are here to provide solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, this is Joanne Victoria. I am the host of the Sanity Project podcast, and I partner with IT professionals in telecommunications, technology, entertainment, and mass media whose work-life balance plan has imploded and who want more success, more confidence, more fun, and more inner peace. The Sanity Project podcast is a platform for experts in the personal development IT communities to share their wisdom, expertise, and solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. And our guest is going to help you do just that. Our guest today is Dr. John McGrail, who is the author of The Synthesis Effect, Your Direct Path to Personal Power and Transformation. Dr. John McGrail is a renowned hypnotherapist, self-improvement expert, and spirituality teacher. Dr. McGrail's writing and expertise have been featured in many major print and online publications, including Time, Reader's Digest, U.S. News and World Report, Cosmopolitan, Redbook, Self, the Chicago Tribune, New York Daily News, WebMD, Huffington Post, and many more. He frequently appears on TV and radio programs nationwide and abroad. His book, The Synthesis Effect, has garnered rave reviews. His websites are drjohnmcgrail.com, that's drjohnmcgrail.com, and hypnotherapylosangeles.com. His website address is drjohnmcgrail.com, and today Dr. McGrail will be talking to us about stress and anxiety. Welcome to the show, John McGrail.
Hi, Joanne. Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight.
I'm grateful that you are here. I know our listeners are going to be grateful as well, because stress and anxiety it's an epidemic. As you said, it's an epidemic, and it is making people very sick.
Well, it really is. And, it's interesting because this show's sort of dedicated to IT professionals. And part of the reason, I do believe this is a cultural phenomenon. As we were chatting just before the show, If you were to ask me 5 or 10 years ago, what kind of clients are coming in to see me, it would be a very different population. Today, probably 90 to 95% of my new clients that are coming in for hypnotherapy and self-improvement are coming in with chronic stress and anxiety. And I do believe it's a direct function of the way modern technology-driven Western culture has evolved, because we have become literally energetically imbalanced. And technology, as miraculous as it is, it's allowing us to have this conversation, and we're many hundreds of miles apart, is also responsible for a lot of this because we are overexposed to information. We can see natural disasters happening around the world in real time. And when you're bombarded with that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you don't have a break from it, it has an effect. And the effect is chronic stress, which then can turn into anxiety, which is a very nasty thing to live with.
So aside from turning off the TV and getting off the internet and not using your phone, what are your suggestions for people? Or are those your suggestions?
Those are part of my suggestions, and that is to find a way. What it really requires is to get back in what I call energetic balance. And the reason I use the word energy is because we really are energy machines. And I like to think of the human energy system in sort of 3 streams. This is the easiest way for people to visualize it. We have our physical energy, which is the energy of our physical body. We have emotional energy, which is sort of the energy of our identity, our ego. And then there's this more esoteric energy, more abstract energy called spiritual energy, which a lot of people in Western culture don't want to acknowledge, or they just ignore it. But if all 3 energy streams are in balance, we're very happy campers. If either one of them, any one of them, or all of them, which is usually what happens, gets out of balance, then we have dis-ease. We become stressed, we become anxious, we suffer from physical ailments. So the process to cope with, let's just take chronic stress, because that's sort of a precursor for full-blown anxiety. The process is to rebalance our energies. And part of that process needs to be to unplug whenever you get a chance. You and I can probably remember, and I'm sure many of the listeners out there can remember, when we did just beautifully without our cell phones attached to us 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And of course, now we have smartphones. So any chance you get to get away from the computer, to turn off the phone, to get yourself back into a natural setting if possible. There's a new fad out there now called forest bathing, which is it's an interesting phenomenon. It started in Japan, where people are finding out that, hey, if you spend some time outdoors, away from civilization, away from all the noise and the bombardment, you get less stressed. You feel more at peace. Your body, every part of you becomes healthier. They call it forest bathing. Well, what forest bathing really is going home. That's where we're from. We are originally from nature. And so the more time you can spend in a natural setting, away from civilization, away from all the noise and the technology, the sooner and more quickly your energies become balanced again. And once you balance them, it's pretty easy to maintain it. So yes, that is a big part of it, is just to unplug and get out there and get home, go home to nature.
I'm always telling my people, if they can, and I say that qualifyingly because who knows what's going on in their work environment, but to only stay in front of the screen for 30 to 45 minutes, any screen, and then do something else for the next 15, if that's all they can do during the workday. And that at least gives them something else, get up and walk around. I don't like walking meetings. I think those are just silly. Go outside and walk if you want a walking meeting, but get away from the computer every 45 minutes max. Just get away for 15, 20, 30 minutes if you can. Do something else.
Fabulous idea. And combined with that, a really good technique, and I teach that to a lot of my clients, this is learning how to use your breath as a tool to help you relax and de-stress. And there's a really simple technique. It's called complete breathing. And I use this all the time myself, and I teach it to almost all my clients. And a complete breath is very simple. You simply close your eyes and you breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose. And you literally count the seconds in the beginning. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. Then you hold your breath for 4 seconds. Again, just counting them in the beginning until you get a feel for it. And then you release the breath over 4 seconds. Most people go, and they're done. You have to do it slowly. In for 4, hold for 4, release for 4. And if you do that for even 2 minutes, you do about 10 of those, it's amazing how relaxed you feel and how refreshed you feel. And that's just one of many breathing techniques that really, really help reduce the chronic stress that we have every day at the office. So combined with your taking a break and getting away from the screen, which is mandatory, it really is necessary. If you can do a couple of minutes of complete breathing, it's fabulous. And there's another exercise where you take 21 slow, deep breaths, 21 in a row, counting down from 21 to 0. That takes a few more minutes, but that also is a fabulous way to just relax and sort of recenter yourself.
Yes, it's amazing. With the majority of my guests, no matter what area of influence they bring to the podcast, they're talking about breathing.
Well, breathing is an amazing thing. And most of us obviously don't think about it. We do it automatically. And fortunately, we have this system called the autonomic nervous system that will take care of it for us. But most of us in modern Western culture, and again, when I say modern Western culture, I mean technology-driven and dependent culture, which is most of the world today. Most of us breathe from the top of our lungs, and we don't breathe very efficiently. And that also is not good for your body. But when you breathe on purpose, with purpose, either of those two exercises are really powerful. And there are many, many more. Even if you just set a timer for 5 minutes and focus on your breathing, which is another form of a simple meditation. The brain, we have a pharmacy between our ears, and our brains and our endocrine system secrete all kinds of very powerful chemicals into our bodies to help us survive. The chemicals of chronic stress are cortisol and adrenaline, and they are very powerful, but Mother Nature designed the stress mechanism to be a very short-term mechanism so that when our ancestors were out hunting the saber-toothed tiger, the proverbial cat, and the saber-toothed tiger turned the tables on them, they would go into stress mode and they'd get super strong and super fast, and it was our way of surviving so that they didn't become lunch. But in today's society, when we're not chasing saber-toothed tigers and we're chronically stressed by all the stuff that we have to deal with and all the bombardment of information and negativity, chronic stress, adrenaline and cortisol are very corrosive chemicals. They're very strong and very corrosive, and they do degrade both the physical body and the brain, and they eventually can get into the spirit. When you breathe on purpose, with purpose for a few minutes, whether it's complete breathing or the 21 breath exercise or just setting a timer for a few minutes and just focusing on your breathing and closing your eyes and letting your body relax, it triggers the secretion of serotonin and dopamine into our system. Serotonin and dopamine are our natural narcotics, if you will. They make us feel good, and they counteract the effects of adrenaline and cortisol. So the breath is an amazingly powerful tool because it literally, physically can de-stress and retune both the body and the mind.
Well, I'm taking notes here, and I'm so engrossed because I do take notes because for me that's a way to just remember everything. And it's what you're telling me about the chronic stress is corrosive. I never knew that. I mean, I never knew that the way you've presented it. And now that you have presented it this way, I'm kind of in a mini shock here because otherwise stress wouldn't kill, right? If it weren't corrosive. But now it's all connecting. The little tiny pieces of puzzles about stress before it gets to anxiety are now just sort of presented in a different view to me. And I hope in a different view to our listeners so that they hear it in the way that you've said it, that how if you have this chronic stress and it is killing you and you don't even know it, you have to breathe specifically in the way that Dr. McGrail is telling you, people, listeners, who are mostly IT professionals, but very many other people have come on to listen and download these podcasts because I've been fortunate enough, knock on wood, to have great guests, such as yourself. So, okay. So the breath, we use the breath, we turn off the electronic devices. And how can you help people what can you suggest for people who are at work and have no choice but to sit in front of that computer? There is no choice.
Right. Well, that unfortunately exists, and I certainly understand that. But we all have the ability to close our eyes. And one of the things that I teach virtually every person, every client, and every workshop and seminar student I work with, and I work with people around the world, is a very, very powerful tool. If there is a magic pill, a magic silver bullet in the human arsenal for creating health and wellness and energetic balance, it is meditation. And meditation is a grossly misunderstood practice and technique. A lot of people are afraid of it, or they try it very quickly and it doesn't, quote, work, or they get distracted and they think they won't do it. And it's really very, very simple. But even if you have to sit at that screen, you can take 5 minutes or even 10 minutes, even a minute, and close your eyes and stop looking at the screen and then just focus on your breath, the simplest form of meditation there is. And if you get distracted, you just acknowledge that you're distracted and you go back to the breath. And when you get another thought that pops in, and they will, you just go back to the breath. And if you practice that for a while, it becomes a skill that is very, very, very powerful. The scientific evidence behind the ability and the power of a meditative practice to create health and wellness and energetic balance, and to help cure, if you will, or eliminate so many physical conditions. You know, there are a lot of wacky diseases that we suffer from, and they are really specific to modern Western culture. That these autoimmune deficiencies like IBS and Crohn's and lupus and fibromyalgia, and the list goes on and on, ulcerative colitis. All of these diseases that so many people are suffering from have a huge emotional and, here comes the word, stress component associated with them. And when we get rid of the stress That's one thing that hypnotherapy is really good for, doing it very quickly. And then we maintain this new energetic balance through a meditative practice, which doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes consistency. It is amazing how these diseases can go away very, very quickly. So that, if for someone that has no choice, that is the solution. Close your eyes and breathe for a few minutes. Everybody can do that.
Everybody and anybody can do that. These diseases that you're talking about, and I'll put them in quotes, they have medications that are advertised on television all day long, mostly in the evening when their audience is there at watching. And these are the diseases they're giving you medications for.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, Joanne, is that most of the medications don't work very well.
How could they?
Right, because they're dealing with symptoms, they're not dealing with the cause. And, I don't want to go into too much of a philosophical discussion on the allopathic medical model, which is what we in Western society have become so used to. But even that medical model is beginning to change, because there is no disease or disorder in the body, none, that does not have an emotional component to it. And when we treat the mind and the body as a holistic whole, if you will, then we can generate and maintain physical, emotional, and spiritual health and wellness very, very easily. So, yeah, of course they want you to take a pill. And, we are a society that is now, again, with the miracle of technology, we're used to instant everything, and we want instant gratification. So if something goes wrong in our body, we want to just take a pill and make it go away. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't work very well, particularly with these disorders, because we're not addressing the cause. And the cause is this condition that we can call chronic stress, or you can just call it energetic imbalance. Call it whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But when you're feeling that way, you are not balanced. And when you're out of balance, something's got to give.
So as a side to this, somehow it came into my brain, not that it makes much. Do you think that all these imbalances are involved with the opioid issue that's going on in our country?
Well, I think the opioid issue certainly is related. One of the things that we have learned to do very well is to numb ourselves from life. And we use a lot of different substances and activities to do that. Some people choose alcohol, some people choose drugs, some people choose food, some people choose exercise, some people choose sex. There are many ways that modern human beings, have learned to numb ourselves from the realities of life. Now, of course, opioids, the epidemic is harmful, but what are we trying to get away from? Why are we numbing ourselves from life unless life is unpleasant? And the only time life is unpleasant is when we're out of balance. So, yeah, there's a correlation, but it's not any different than any of the other addictions that unfortunately people fall victim to. But like everything, these things are treatable. And I think eventually it's going to have to come back around the other way anyway. Otherwise, we're going to live ourselves right off the planet.
You're so right. Yeah, the holistic approach is the only approach that I subscribe to 99% of the time. And Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. Finish the point.
Well, it's just the only way to live. I used to work, part of the work that I used to do when I was consulting with businesses was to put together preventive medical centers. And it was all about holistic health. And there were very few prescriptions prescribed. It didn't work that way. There were other things that you did. You had acupuncture, you had hypnotherapy, you had massage, you had all other ways to get you out of the stress function that most people were living in. And I think that's the only way to do it. That we have a big fight against medical, the big pharma. And okay, so we've got the holistic approach. We've got the physical, emotional, and spiritual things covered, sort of covered. I mean, I don't think you could ever repeat them often enough to rebalance the energy to get you back into your body and into your brain. And one of the most important ways to do it is with the breath, with meditation. And how do you deal with people who don't trust that these ways are going to work? Because, I mean, I experience people who, are stuck in their ways because this is what they learned or didn't learn, but they're stuck in their ways. First they say no, then they say prove it, then they try it and say it doesn't work, and then they go back to being stressed. So how do you deal with people who are resistant?
Well, first of all, I explained to them that human beings by nature are resistant to change. It is in our DNA, and it has been that way for many, many thousands of years. So it's normal, and it doesn't. And because it's normal, if you accept the fact that that's there, then I also explained that there are ways around that resistance. But, the thing that's interesting is that we have developed this ethos in our society, and this was a big part of the research I did when I was doing my doctoral dissertation. I sort of traced it back about 500 or 600 years when the modern scientific model was really born. And that's based in empiricism. I'll believe it when I see it. That's how our modern sciences work. And that doctrine or dogma, if you will, does serve a purpose to a certain extent. But if you were to ask the native peoples of the world, the indigenous cultures that still live with and of the earth, how they manifest, they would say, we don't need to see in order to believe. We believe in order to see. And ironically, modern scientific experimentation is now proving that in the nature of things, the way manifestation occurs, it is believing in order to see that actually is the way things happen. In other words, the energy you are putting out is going to affect the energy that you are attracting. So what I explain to people is, look, your way is not working, clearly, because you're not feeling good. You can be as skeptical as you want, but if you give this process a fair trial, I promise you will feel better. You have to be consistent with it, and you have to give it some time. It is not magic. It doesn't happen overnight. I keep a little magic wand in my desk, by the way, Joanna, because I get these folks in that are going to be my new clients. And when I sense that they're looking for the magic wand, I take it out and I say, look, here's my magic wand. I'd be happy to tap you on the head and make it all go away. Unfortunately, I can't get the thing to work. And if I ever do, I'm going to be a very wealthy man because I'll charge about $100,000 a tap. So let's get to reality. The reality is what you're doing isn't working, clearly. So I'm going to ask you to be open-minded enough to try this. I will help you get by your natural resistance, because that's one of the most powerful uses for hypnosis and meditation. It literally shuts the resistance mechanism down. Give it a fair try. And if you don't feel better after a reasonable amount of time, then you can always go back to your old ways. But don't just say it doesn't work and then go back to your old ways, because your old ways haven't worked. So why not try something new? And, anybody that finds their way to me or someone like me is sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. So they're maybe skeptical, but they're at least willing to give something new a try. And the vast, vast majority of the time, and the vast majority of the folks I work with, whether it's in a workshop, a seminar, or one-to-one with clients, experience profound change, and usually very quickly. The synthesis process really does work well. And once they do, then obviously they're converts. But, it's like anything. If you don't try it, it can't work. And some people just don't. And if they want to live that way, that's certainly their privilege. That's their choice.
Well, I think you've said it all, at least for the time that we have together. Give me some final words for our audience so that they will remember them. Just something. Besides the breath, I know you've got the breath, and I know the breath is like vital. I mean, obviously, it happens automatically anyway.
Right.
But the specific ways of breathing that will help people reduce their stress, help people reduce their upcoming anxiety, and help people live a healthier life.
Mm-hmm.
There anything else that you can suggest to our audience before we end this session today?
Well, what I would say with parting words is one of my favorite quotes of all time was from a gentleman named Christopher Morley, who was, I think, a contemporary of Mark Twain, not as famous, but very bright. And he said, there is only one success: to be able to live your life in your own way. And I love to start my seminars and speeches with that quote, and then say to everybody, this is what I will leave you all with, folks. I promise you that you have the resources within you to be able to live the life you want to live and to make the changes you want to make if you're not happy with the way things are going. They are there. You will probably need a little assistance. That's where people like me come in, but it is absolutely doable, and it can happen very, very quickly. You deserve to have the life you want, so go out and get it. And if that needs a little help, then go get the help. That's what I would say.
Well, I hope everybody heard that. And if they haven't, one of my suggestions is to always re-listen to this podcast over and over again to see if you've missed something. I want you to refer to everybody you know in your office, in your home, and I want you to go to iTunes and give Dr. John McGrail a 5-star review because he deserves it. And in your spare time, you can go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com. One of my products is a self-study program, the Be Your Authentic Self program. And you can do it in your own time, your own space. If you don't want to hire anybody or go to see Dr. McGrail or me, it includes a full suite of PDFs, audios, and videos for $297, which is cheap at 10 times the price. So I'm grateful that Dr. John McGrail was here today to be our guest, and I thank him for being here because he has said some magnificent things that I'm going to re-listen to as soon as I hang up. And thank you, Dr. John McGrail, for being here today.
Well, Joanne, my thanks again. You're doing a great service with this show, and I'm delighted if I can be a small part of helping people live more powerfully. So thank you very much for your generosity and your invitation.
I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com and continue the conversation on my podcast page. And get a free copy of my book, The True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.